Hello everyone, I'm Sebastian Y and this is Principles of Micro. In this set of videos we are going to introduce consumer choice theory. Consumer choice theory tells us about how households make decisions about what they will consume, but it's also possible to extend this theory to think about decisions about labor and leisure and consumption and saving. This will be an introduction to this topic. We will save a deeper exploration of the theory of consumer choice for an intermediate microeconomics course. In real life, consumers consume thousands of different goods. We call the set of goods that a consumer buys a bundle. We're going to consider a simplified reality where the consumer only consumes two different goods in their bundle. This will make the math a lot easier for us while still communicating the main issues at hand. In the theory of consumer choice, the consumer's goal is to select a bundle that makes them the happiest among the bundles that are possible for them to select. There are two main components of this problem that we need to understand before we can get to the solution: the consumer's budget constraint and the consumer's preferences. In this video, we're going to focus on the budget constraint. When we talk about preferences in the next video, we will see that consumers generally like to consume more stuff, and if given the opportunity, they will do so. But a consumer's choices are constrained by their budget. The budget constraint is an equation that states that the total spending that a consumer does must equal their income. They can't spend more than their income, but also spending less than their entire income doesn't make any sense because they would prefer to have more stuff. Let's consider an example of a consumer who consumes two goods in their bundle, rum and bananas. We will define the variables R as the number of rum that they consume, and B, the number of bananas they consume, and an ordered pair consisting of these two will represent the bundle that a consumer chooses. Every bundle will have some amount of rum, R, and some amount of bananas, B. We will also suppose that the consumer's income, which we'll represent with I, is $2.40, and the price of rum is $40 per unit, and the price of bananas is $5 per unit. Note here that rum and bananas are just one possible example, and that's why I'm using the variables R and B here, but you can use whatever variables make sense for the problem that you're doing. X and Y is also a pretty common one we use. The consumer's income and the prices of the goods are what define the budget constraint. Remember that the idea of the budget constraint is that the consumer's spending must equal their income. Using this information that we have, the total spending that the consumer does on rum will be 40 times R. 40 is the price per unit, and R is the number of units of rum they're consuming. Their total spending on bananas will be 5B. And so 40R plus 5B will be the total amount of spending that this consumer does, and that needs to be equal to their total income of $2.40. This equation is the consumer's budget constraint. On a graph, this is a straight line, and so another term we often use for this is the budget line. Now let's think about how to draw that graph. I'm going to draw an axis and label that with R and B. Which axis to put which good on is completely arbitrary. I'm always going to put the first good that is listed on the horizontal and the second good on the vertical. Remember that if you switch these around from how I do them, everything else is going to have to get switched down the line that we do. When we think about what the budget constraint looks like, let's think about the intercepts. First of all, what if this consumer were to spend their entire income on rum and buy 0 bananas? That's going to give us the equation 40R plus 5 times 0, since they're consuming 0 bananas, that's 0, equals 240. Now if I solve for R by dividing both sides by 40, I will get R equals 6. That tells us that the intercept on the R axis is 6. This consumer could buy 6 rum, but they would have to buy 0 bananas. We can also think about what would happen if the consumer bought 0 rum and spent their entire income on bananas. In that case, the equation would be 0 plus 5B equals 240. And then we could solve this equation for B by dividing both sides by 5. And that will give us 48 bananas. That tells us that our intercept on the B-axis is going to be 48. The consumer could either buy 48 bananas and 0 rum, or 6 rum and 0 bananas, or any combination of B and R on the line in between the two. Our budget line will be a downward sloping line between those 2 points. Another example of a point along this budget constraint would be if the consumer spent half their income on bananas and the other half of their income on rum. That bundle would have 3 rum and 24 bananas. These are just 3 examples. There are an infinite number of bundles along this line. The slope of the budget constraint is the ratio of the prices. The slope of the budget line is the ratio of the 2 prices. We express this as the price of the horizontal axis variable, which is rum in our case, divided by the price of the vertical axis variable, which is bananas. Plugging these in, we're going to get 40 over 5, which is 8. This tells us the number of bananas that we could swap for 1 unit of rum. Looking at our graph, for example, we could go from 3 rum, 24 bananas, and go over to 4 rum, and the slope would tell us how many bananas we would have to give up. That's 8. 24 minus 8 is 16, and so that would be another point along this budget constraint. We can state this both ways. If we want 1 more rum, we have to give up 8 bananas, and if we want 1 more banana, we would have to give up 1/8 of a rum. Now let's think about what it would look like for the budget constraint to change. This could happen for 2 different reasons. Either the income changes or one of the prices change. First, let's consider what would happen if our consumer's income increased from $240 up to $320. We can write our new budget constraint as 40R plus 5B, since the prices haven't changed, but instead of 240, this will now be equal to 320. To figure out the intercepts, we can do the same thing as before. For the rum intercept, 40R equals 320. Divide both sides by 40, and we get R equals 8. For the B intercept, 5B equals 320. Divide both sides by 5, we get B equals 64. Let's draw the graph. Our previous budget constraint had 6 and 48 as our intercepts. I'll draw that in first. And now with this change, we've gone from 6 to 8 and 48 to 64. Drawing in our new budget constraint, what we can see here is that we have a parallel shift in the budget constraint outward. This enables our consumer to buy bundles that they were not able to before. The slope is the same because the prices didn't change. The slope is still 8 in this case. Finally, let's consider what would happen if one of the prices changed. Let's suppose that the price of rum increased from 48 up to 60, while keeping our income and the price of bananas the same. Our new budget constraint equation will be 60R plus 5B equals 240. To come up with our new rum intercept, we have 60R equals 240, and so R equals 4. For the banana intercept, 5B equals 240, and so B equals 48. Notice that that 48 has not changed from our original budget constraint. Let's draw the graph now. Starting with our original, we had 48 and 6. And our new budget constraint will have a banana intercept of 48 still, but a rum intercept of 4. Drawing that in, it will look something like this. What we see here is that when one of the prices changes, we have a pivot in the budget line. In this case, a price increase pivots the budget constraint inward. On the other hand, a price decrease would pivot the budget line outward. Because the ratio of the prices has changed, we now have a change in the slope. In our case, it became steeper. Our slope is now going to be 60 divided by 5. Remember, it's the ratio of the prices, which is 12. That's an increase from before. Because rum got more expensive, we now have to give up more bananas for every rum we want to buy. This has been a quick introduction to the budget constraint. In the next video, we will talk about a consumer's preferences.